Greetings, and welcome to the All Facts Matter podcast, where we push back against corporate media propaganda with facts, evidence, and data. I'm Peter, the author of All Facts Matter. Let's begin. Today I'm find myself having to ask the question, on what planet does corporate media spend most of its time? I am motivated to ask this question because the level of economic illiteracy in corporate media at times is truly astounding. And they have to be economically illiterate because that's the only way that an organization like Reuters can put out an article like this with a headline like this, bemoaning how consumers are still worried about inflation, even though the economy is doing good by all major indicators. Yeah. That's what they're telling people. Yeah. They're actually trying to defend the economy. As good as the economy might seem across most major indicators, inflation that peaked at 9% more than 2 years ago has been hard for Vice President and Democratic nominee Kamala Harris to outrun. Most major indicators are showing a good economy. Yeah. Only if you accept the corporate media horse hockey and don't look at the actual data. The actual data shows what pretty much every American already knows. They know it every time they look in their wallets, every time they go shopping. This economy sucks. And so the question has to be asked of corporate media. On what planet do you spend most of your time? Yeah. Economy is good? Really? When real incomes which started out at, aggregate personal income started out in January 2021 at 20,516,500,000,000 and has since declined to 20,130,600,000,000. I mean, that's the personal income for everybody in the United States. And it has gone down since the Biden-Harris administration came into office. Yeah. As we discussed when I did my presentation on the labor cost of food items, when people have to work a third as much again just to afford the same amount of food, that's not a healthy economy. There's no economic perspective where that's a healthy thing. When real personal income is declining, that's not a healthy economy. There's no economic perspective where that is a healthy economic situation. And when employment stagnates and then declines, as it did in 2022 and is doing now, this is not the sign of a healthy economy. This is a sign of an economy that's in trouble. Yeah. But corporate media is saying, well, the economy is good according to most major indicators. No, it's not. This is a major indicator. The employment level is a major indicator. This is one of the stats that is generated in the Employment Situation Summary every month by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Keep in mind, all of my data that I use for this comes either from the Bureau of Labor Statistics or from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. This is the official government data. Most of the charts I generate online through the Federal Reserve Economic Data System, commonly known as FRED. Yeah, this is data that anybody can access. These graphs publicly available. This is the URL. I always make these available to anybody who wants to see them. This is the data that I look at. This is the data that's out there. This is the official data. This is a major economic indicator, and it shows that the U.S. economy is not doing well. Yeah. Now, how are they? Okay. So, what are they seeing? What are they trying to promote as sign of a good economy? What they're trying to, or what they're arguing is that, well, wages have been growing. That's a good thing. Inflation is coming down. That's a good thing. Unemployment went down, and we won't talk about how it's going back up again. And so they're saying that this is the sign of an economy that's managed to survive inflation and is doing okay. And if you simply stopped your thought process at this point, you would be forgiven for thinking that everything was okay, because inflation is not as bad as it was. But we must remember, lower inflation simply means the prices are merely rising more slowly than they were before. Wages are growing more slowly than they were before. Unemployment is rising again. So wage growth slowing, prices still going up, unemployment going up. But that's okay. This is a good sign. That's what they want you to believe. Now, part of the gaslighting that they use is they kind of cherry-picked their wage metric. They're using the average hourly wage of private non-supervisory employees. Now, this is the narrower metric, one of the narrower metrics that is contained within the maintained by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I typically use the average hourly wage of all employees when I'm doing my calculations, and as you can see, it generally the average hourly wage for all employees is generally about $5 more per hour than that for just the non-supervisory employees. And so you might think, well, they're using the lower wage. So they're taking the more conservative approach, right? Well, not so fast. Because while the non-supervisory wage is lower, it was also more responsive to inflationary forces. So as prices were going up and up and up and up, the non-supervisory wage was going up faster than wages overall by about a percentage point at its peak, and has maintained a higher rate of growth since. So what they did is when they put together that graph, is they took the wage metric that had the best performance under conditions of inflation, not the worst one. If you look at the performance of the average hourly earnings for all employees, how did it fare under inflation? Not as well. It didn't rise as much, and it's been consistently lower than the non-supervisory wage in terms of growth all along. So they're actually presenting the best statistic, not the worst. Yeah, and getting back to what I've said before about labor cost, where if you take the average hourly wage and divide it by the price level of any particular good, what you arrive at is the labor cost. How many hours do you have to work to get that item? When I did my presentation on this, I did use food items because it's something that everybody that's something that everybody has to get. And so, one of the examples I used was the cost of beef. This is the labor cost of beef using the average hourly wage. And as we saw, today people are having to work about a third more hours or fractions of an hour to be able to afford a pound of beef. Well, we can do the same calculation using the average hourly wage of non-supervisory employees. It's the same. It's just the same math, just using a different denominator. And when we do that, we get uh, the cost is a little bit higher, and we would expect this because the non-supervisory wage, remember, is about $5 an hour less. And so we see the exact same performance, the exact same rising and falling and rising again. And it's just ratcheted up because throughout time, the non-supervisory wage is about $5 less. And because it's $5 less, the labor cost is a little bit more. This is to be expected. However, when we want to consider what the magnitude impact is to the consumer, to the worker for this, the best way to quantify that is to, as I've done as I frequently do, is to index that to a base period. And when we do that, when we index the labor costs for both the average hourly wage and average hourly wage of just non-supervisory employees, most of that difference disappears. And so as of September, with the average hourly wage for non-supervisory employees, your labor cost was about 19% higher versus 22% higher using the average hourly wage. Obviously, a tremendous difference, but it's still, you're having to work more to get the same amount of food. To get the same amount, and I'm using beef, but it could be any item, any food item, any item, period. That what you're seeing when you're dealing with inflation is you're looking at having to spend more to get the same amount of the same good. And that's what inflation is, remember. And so regardless of this saying, oh, inflation is down, everything's good. No, everything's not, because I'm still having to work considerably longer just to get the same cheeseburger and fries. If I have to work 20% longer just to be able to afford that hamburger patty, that's not good. And I want to get back to where I would like to not have to work that extra 20% just to get the same burger and fries. And I venture to say most consumers feel the same way. And this is the reality of inflation. This is what the year-on-year figure doesn't show. That, yes, the prices go up, and then they taper off, and the inflation slows down. But they stay up. And so until wages get up to a point where they're back in line, so that if they start where they start here, if we start at the same spot by indexing to January 2021, inflation, consumer prices went way up relative to wages, both the non-supervisory wage and all wages, all employees, went way up, and wages still have not caught up. And again, this is food price inflation that I'm using here. This is one of the most, as bad as consumer price inflation was, food price inflation was even worse. And food is the one thing everybody needs. We might be able to, you might be able to postpone the purchase of an iPhone or a new pair of jeans. It's a lot harder to postpone the purchase of a cheeseburger and fries. You have to eat. Most people are generally fond of eating. And so, talking about how inflation has come down, if the wages have not caught up yet, that doesn't help people any. This gap is what people notice about inflation, and this gap still exists. And we can actually quantify that gap in terms of an actual income reduction. All we have to do is you take the indexed amount of the average wage, all employees, non-supervisory employees, doesn't matter. You subtract the consumer price index if you index it from the same amount, and this is the differential. This is how much inflation ate into the average paycheck throughout the Biden-Harris administration. Yes, it's been getting better, but it's still very much in the negative. Even if you take the optimistic path with the non-supervisory wage, you're still in the negative when it comes to food prices. Your food budget is still larger, taking a larger portion of your paycheck today than it did at the start of the Biden-Harris administration. That's not a healthy economy. That's not a good economic sign for the average consumer, the average worker. That's frustration. That's I have to spend more money on food. I don't get to spend money on other things. Or I don't get to spend money on I have to spend money on hamburger because I can't afford steak. This is what inflation does. By making your food budget a larger portion of your overall paycheck, this is what this is what it does to you. This is what it does to people. This is the impact of inflation, not the year-on-year graph. That simply shows that the problem's not getting any worse. Okay, that's good. It's not getting any worse. We still haven't gotten back to where we were. This is the distressing part. This is the frustration that people are feeling. And corporate media can't seem to figure that out. Again, on what planet do they spend most of their time that they don't realize this? Yeah. And why is Trump making hay with this? Well, because we had the exact opposite situation during his term of office. Food prices relative to wages were going down. We were having more money to spend on food. Instead of having cheeseburger and fries, we were having steak and potatoes. That's a good sign for most people. That's a good economy for most people. That's what people want to see. That's what they want to experience at the checkout counter. And broadly speaking, that's what the price levels were. That's what the wage levels were under Donald Trump. Pretending that this didn't happen is corporate media lying to you. Pretending that this didn't happen is just pure gaslighting. Why do people think the economy was better under Donald Trump? Because in a very practical, measurable, empirical way, it was. And the data shows it. But it's not just that people are having to work more for the same amount. Remember, employment has been stagnating. People are having a harder time working at all. Remember, this is another major economic indicator. And because people are having a hard time finding work at all, the number of people who are not in the labor force, who've just given up on working, is increasing. And a little factoid that the Biden-Harris administration doesn't want you to realize. When they came into office, the number of people in the United States not in the labor force, right at about 100,800,000. And while they did have some success getting it down, as of the latest jobs report, the number of people not in the labor force, 100,800,000. They're right back where they started from. That's their notion of job growth. Is that they managed to keep the number of people not in the labor force. Well, at least it didn't get any larger. But it did get larger because they were able to get it down. They wanted to. You want to see it going down. And they were having it go down for a time. That lasted all of about a year. Then it started going back up again. And it's been going up ever since. And we know that that is because of people exiting the labor force directly and just simply not going in and just simply giving up on labor. We know that because when the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports how the labor force flows move, the net of people moving from not being in the labor force to having a job versus people having a job and exiting the labor force, everywhere that this is negative is where more people exited the labor force than came into it. And that's been the prevalent trend for most months throughout the Biden-Harris administration. These are people leaving the workforce. And as you can tell, there's more people leaving the workforce now than before. This is where the labor force metrics started growing, and this is what we're seeing, that people are leaving the workforce. People exiting the workforce is not the sign of a healthy economy. And to illustrate just how bizarre the labor force flows are, first they leave the labor force completely. They just completely give up on it. Then they try to get back into the workforce, and so they're unemployed for a time. And this is one of the screwball things about how unemployment is calculated. If you're not in the labor force, then they don't count you as part of the unemployed. Never mind that you're not working, they just don't count you as part of the unemployed. That's a bureaucratic thing that don't ask me to make that make sense. I can't. But what happens is that people move after they've exited the labor force, then they try to get back in, and so they spend a little time being unemployed. And then they go from being unemployed to being employed again. But of course, not everybody is doing this. Not everybody's able to do this. A chunk of people every month are staying outside of the labor force. They're not making it back into even looking for a job to being unemployed. And so the not labor force metric is rising. But because they're going out of the labor force completely, that's why the unemployment rate hasn't been rising. It's not that people aren't leaving the workforce. It's not that net employment isn't declining. It's that it's not being, they're technically not classified as unemployed. And so they've managed to avoid having to be confronted with a rising unemployment rate. If you factored in the number of people who have gone straight out of the labor force into just completely exiting the labor force altogether, the actual unemployment rate is far, far higher in this country. Yeah. And that's how you end up with full-time employment going down. It actually peaked in summer of last year, around June of 2023. And it has been moving down pretty much ever since. And again, this is a major economic indicator. Full-time employment, I'd consider that pretty major. That's what we want to see in this country. That's what we want to see for everybody, is full-time, everybody having a job, everybody full-time employment, gainfully employed, earning a paycheck. It was rising. This is a good thing when it's rising. But it stopped. And now it's declining. And this is not good. This is not the sign of a healthy economy. And in specific sectors, manufacturing rose, stagnated, and now is declining. And this is particularly troublesome because it is manufacturing. Yes, we want to see people in manufacturing type jobs. We want to be producing stuff. We want to be making things. There's as H. Ross Perot used to say, the problem with this economy is we're not making enough things. He said it sounded so much better when he said it in his East Texas twang, which I can't do. But we're literally not making enough things, and we're not keeping people in enough manufacturing jobs to be making things. We were able to have that growing for a time, but then it stopped and it's been going down. This has been the theme for the economy under Biden and Kamala Harris. That what they inherited was picking up steam for a time, but then it ran out of steam and they've not been able to keep it going. And now it's declining. Yeah. And it's not just employment that is declining. The same thing was happening. Industrial production overall was rising. And now it's not. It peaked in September of 2022. Again, another economic indicator. Shows not a healthy economy. When industrial production is going down, that's not good. It's not just industrial production. Plant capacity utilization, same thing. It was rising, and then it stopped, and now it's declining. This is not the sign of a healthy economy. This is the sign of an economy that is not doing well. This is a manufacturing sector of your economy that is stagnating, that is contracting, that is declining. And the basis of all economic activity is people buying and selling and stuff, buying and selling things. You know, if we want to have a healthy economy, people have to be making all the widgets and gadgets and doohickeys and doomaflachis that make, you know, that people want to buy and sell. And if people aren't making the stuff, then you don't have an economy to base anything else on. And we're not doing that. We're not, you know, we haven't been doing that. We were moving in the right direction, and then we stopped. Yeah. And you know, these are all, you know, these are all major economic indicators. And every single one of these indicators that I've just gone through shows that the economy is not doing well. And there's more of them besides that. I could go on and on and on for hours with this stuff. But every single one of these economic indicators, as long as, and including all the ones that I haven't gone into, show the economy being in bad shape. It's not in good shape. It's not doing well. It's in bad shape and it's getting worse. And every single one of these indicators that I've just gone through, as well as many, many more, show an economy that is offering consumers and workers less goods, less stuff, less opportunity, less wages, less of everything. Every single one. Yet corporate media, they're still pushing the Biden-Harris administration narrative that the economy is healthy. We still have corporate media bleeding out the Kamala cackle of Bidenomics is working. Only it's not. It wasn't working as Bidenomics. It's not working now as Kamalanomics. And God forbid she should get elected, but it won't be working as Kamalanomics 2.0 either. Reuters can't understand why people are soured on the economy. The answer is simple. The economy is sour. And it's been going sour for far too long, and people know that. Corporate media wants to tell you, doesn't want to see this, doesn't want you to see this. The Biden-Harris administration doesn't want you to see this. They want you to ignore they want you to ignore the evidence of your own lying eyes and disbelieve your own experience and just trust what the narrative that they're putting out says. Oh, trust us. We say the economy is good, so you can believe us. Don't go with what you experience at the cash register. That doesn't count. And thus I am once again asking the question of corporate media and the Biden-Harris administration. On what planet do they spend most of their time? And that's what I have for this presentation. I hope you found it informative and illuminating, and maybe shed a little bit of understanding about what's happening with our economy in the world. If you like this presentation, please like it and share it out amongst your friends. If you get help put the word out. And if you like my work, please consider making a one-time donation or signing up as a paid subscriber to All Facts Matter. Your support is what keeps this work going, and I greatly appreciate everybody for their support. I greatly appreciate even my free subscribers. The support and encouragement that I get from everybody is what keeps me doing this, and thank you one and all. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for letting me ask the question. And thank you for listening, and have a nice day.